Okay, so thank you for being here this Saturday. This is our second training session for LLTD, and the topic that's being covered today is disability education and advocacy. We're going to be kind of breaking this up into two sections, the first one being advocacy and the mission of Best Buddies, and the second one being disability education, and being spoken by um, our organization, our guest speakers, an organization called To Be Like Me. We'll also have a couple of other guest speakers as well. Um, Before I begin into like the bulk of the presentation, we'll have some speakers from our student advisory board to speak on behalf of what that is and more information about it. And I'll go into the presentation on advocacy, and we'll have a guest speaker, our area director, Kimberly Bush, speak on part of that. And then I'll continue on with the guidelines that we have for Best Buddies and how to interact with the buddies and additional resources that are available to you. And then we'll pass it over to Be Like Me, who are on the call here to speak on disability education. And then we'll wrap it up with some announcements and any questions that you may have. But before we begin, I'm just going to introduce myself in case you're not familiar with me. My name is Joaquin Escalante. I am the Community Engagement Program Manager for Best Buddies, located in the Dallas office. I work alongside your PMs, Allie Lewis and Ashlyn Bridges in the Friendship Program. And besides them, I'm also here to help support our chapters in any way possible. So if you have a question and are unable to get a hold of them for whatever reason, you're always welcome to reach out to me as well. And then a couple of the things that I do besides that are that I work with our local communities to help promote Best Buddies and find ways to collaborate with them, as well as working on creating the Citizens Program. And then I hope oversee our ambassadors, student advisory board and the junior advisory board. With the ambassadors and student advisory board, Allie Lewis also helps oversee that. She is the staff contact for our Houston location, and I would be the one for the Dallas location. As we go through the presentation, if you have any questions, please type them up in the chat and we can address them at a later time. Right before we dive into the disability education part, I'll stop for a moment to see if there are any questions that showed up in the chat and address them briefly, as well as anybody else that wants to just open up their camera and vocalize whatever questions they may have. But then we'll jump right into disability education. And then at the end of that, if you have any questions, you're welcome to ask as well to either myself or our speakers. But now I'm going to go ahead and quickly share or not share my screen anymore and allow Amy and Tanya, our chairs for the board, for the Student Advisory Board, to kind of talk about what that organization is and speak more on that. So whoever it is that is sharing their screen with that Google slide, Tanya or Amy, you can go ahead and do so.
All right, perfect. I am doing that right now. So hello, everyone. My name is Tanya Swanee. I am a senior. I'm chapter president at Seven Lakes High School. I'm a member of the Best Buddies Young Leaders Council and a second-year member of the Best Buddies Houston Student Advisory Board. So me, along with Amy, who will introduce herself in just a second, are super, super excited to share this presentation with you.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Amy Gibson and I am a junior at Bishop Lynch High School. I am also co-chair or second-year co-chair for the Dallas Student Advisory Board and secretary for the Best Buddies chapter at Bishop High School. And as Tanya said, we're just really excited to show you all this presentation and this year.
Yes, exactly. We're so excited to get started. So just a quick overview of what the SIB is. We got started last year. It was our first year. Allie came up with this amazing idea and she pitched it to Houston and Dallas, and we were all so enthusiastic about it. It's based off of the Young Leaders Council. It's meant to kind of be like the YLC, but for local cities and states. So yeah, it's just going to be comprised of chapter leaders from around the Houston and Dallas community. it, like the YLC, is meant to bridge the gap between the student and staff experience. So a lot of the things that we did last year, like we were involved with the friendship walk, and we kind of tried to bridge that gap between what the staff want and what the students want. And it's comprised of diverse chapter leaders. So we recommend all chapter positions, all grades to apply. We had a freshman last year, and it was just wonderful to have that different perspective. So yeah, definitely if you are an underclassman, definitely consider applying. We are dedicated to the education, engagement, and empowerment of student leaders and community volunteers for Best Buddies. That's pretty self-explanatory, but the SAB, in my experience, has just been so important in helping with my organizational skills, helping with me and my networking skills. It's just, it's created a lot of really amazing opportunities. And then members of the SAB will be able to gain valuable experience and further develop their leadership and project management skills. The way the SAB works is that we are given unique initiatives that we come up with at the first meeting, and it can really take like whatever shape the community needs, the members decide. So last year we had a chapter recruitment initiative, and through that I just saw the two people in charge of that truly like transform into such amazing leaders and take on the initiative. And yeah, so it really will change the way you lead and manage a project. And then we developed a collaborative network that you would see in the professional world. So at every meeting, you are required to wear like professional dress, and it's exactly like a board meeting would be for Best Buddies. We try to model that to make sure that you're kind of prepared for like the professional world. We really want this to be an opportunity that you can use and learn from, and hopefully kind of model hopefully this will kind of model the way that you act in the professional world at actual board meetings and stuff like that.
Okay, so this past year with the Dallas Student Advisory Board, I loved collaborating with like other SAB members who were just as passionate about Best Buddies and the Student Advisory Board as me. I also enjoyed working on initiatives with the Dallas SAB. One initiative that we worked on was near the end of the year. We sent out thank you letters to all the Texas CPs, which is just like a really cool way for the SAB to say like thank you for all the hard work that CPs do like throughout the year. Also, another thing that I loved was near the end of the year, we got to have a statewide Texas SAB board like meeting with the Houston SAB, which was just like a really cool way for us to share our initiatives with like each other.
Yeah, for sure. Hold on, I accidentally went back. Let me figure this out. Sorry, technical difficulties. Oh goodness. Yes, but past experiences. So for the Houston SAB, we focus a lot on our blog, which is called Best Buddies Student to Student. It is a blog, as we said, not a website. So it's just our opinions on how to be the best chapter leaders we can. A lot of really fun tips for like, we had one about like how to execute different types of socials. So yeah, just really fun stuff. We also talked a lot about chapter engagement and how to better build your community. Before COVID-19 hit, we had a bunch of really fun plans on creating like citywide spirit nights, and we hope to hopefully safely do all of this stuff this upcoming year. We'll be doing virtual meetings for the beginning of the term, and when we did do virtual meetings last year, we focused on creating a statewide community with the call and a chapter takeout, chapter like toolkit. So yeah, it was just some really fun, interesting initiatives, and we really would love it if y'all applied and joined the family.
Okay, so for the goal for the Dallas Student Advisory Board this year is to organize new initiatives that the Dallas SAB can work on throughout the year, as well as collaborate with like local chapters and ambassadors and obtain like a professional atmosphere for board members and bridge communication between the Best Buddies staff and chapter officers and members, which was like the main goal of the Student Advisory Board, like in general, like both SAB boards, and also to create sustainability for the Dallas Student Advisory Board in like the future.
Exactly. So for Houston, we are super excited about creating unique initiatives. Like I said before, last year, at our first meeting, we're all just so excited, and we came up with our initiatives for the entire year, and we hope to do that this year as well. No 2 years are going to look exactly the same, because we really do want to personalize it to what the members would like to do. The SAB truly just gives you the resources and the platform to be able to enact change and do something, like make a difference in your community with like just extra resources that the SAB would provide for you. So we do our monthly meetings, and those are professional. We hope to continue past year successes. Everyone, we had everyone fill out a form at the end of the year, and it was just so wonderful to see everyone's like glowing positive responses, and we hope to continue that success. And we also want to bridge communication between student leaders. We want like Best Buddies Texas to feel like a family, and I feel like bringing the student perspective into that is just super beneficial, and we hope to really make it seem like a family.
Okay, so here's a timeline for how the recruitment process will go for both Dallas and Houston. So if you like want to take a picture of it, like feel free to. Okay, so applications will open on September 25th, and you will have until October 15th to submit the application. After the applications close, we will communicate the next steps, which will be to schedule a virtual interview with either Tanya or I and a Best Buddy staff member, just depending like whether if you're in Houston or Dallas, that's like how you'll get picked. We will be interviewing the week of October 26th, so that's 10/26 through 10/30. And once we choose and announce the new staff members, which will be on November 6th, an introductory meeting will be held sometime before Thanksgiving. And then after that, a SAB retreat will be held sometime in December before the holidays.
Yes, perfect. And then this is just some application information. You might be a little bit confused, like, oh my gosh, there's 2 applications, there's 2 steps in this, oh, crazy. We will break it down for you. So the first one, we are just gonna have you fill out a form. There's gonna be just a few questions. We don't wanna take up too much of your time. Just a few diverse questions talking about your involvement in Best Buddies, your involvement in other organizations, and what you've done with your involvement. And then if you're selected, we will be moving on to the interview process. The interviews will be around 15 minutes. They're meant to be short, to kind of be modeled after a job interview. Again, we do really want to emphasize the professional aspect of the SAB. Our preferred candidate is a detailed application by someone who truly lives up to the Best Buddies mission in their daily life. It's just super fun interviewing everyone and seeing everyone, and there are so many amazing people that apply. So definitely some tough decisions last year. Definitely are going to be some tough decisions this year, but we're really excited. Once applicants have applied and interviewed, the co-chairs and the staff liaison will make final decisions on board members. This will be done through a rubric, so there is no bias, no, oh, I know her, so I'm probably going to get in on it. No. There's a rubric. We are going to be very fair, and we would like to have a variety of grade levels with different leadership positions. So that is presidents, officers, sophomores, juniors, seniors, freshmen, everyone. And then if you would like to contact us, here is our information. If you guys have any questions at all about the SAB, pop it in the chat and we will answer.
I think one question is, will the retreat be virtual? But I think Allie responded. So to answer that question, it's like we'll just determine on like where everyone is in like COVID terms and whatever. So we're not like chosen yet whether it's gonna be virtual or in person.
Yeah, we definitely want everyone. One thing that we really want to stress is we're going to do whatever everyone feels safest doing. So if everyone or like a couple of people on the SAB decide, hey, like I really don't think this is the best thing for me, for my family right now, that is completely fine. We will definitely, it's like we don't really know what's going to happen by December, obviously. So we will decide when the time comes, but we are comfortable with both options, obviously. Mm-hmm. Are there any other questions? No? All right. Well, if y'all have any questions, definitely chat me or Amy, and we will definitely try and answer them. But thank you guys so much for your time.
Thank y'all.
Thank y'all for that information. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen again. And like they said, be on the lookout for that information in the coming week, as that will be sent out to chapter leadership through our various communication channels. All right. So, Best Buddies Advocacy. I want you to think about these questions as I go through the following slides. How do you advocate for those with IDD? Are you aware of what supports your buddies have in and out of school? Are you reaching out to everyone or just your immediate group of friends and family to be volunteers and chapter members? And do all your chapter members feel like they have a voice within the chapter? All important things to just take into consideration as you go through this year and in following years in anything that you do regarding the friendship chapters. So this right here, you all are pretty much familiar with the mission of Best Buddies. It's exactly what we do, all the programs that we do, the friendship chapters, through those one-to-one friendships, the integrated employments, our jobs program, the leadership development and inclusive living, something that we don't have in Texas yet, but we hope to bring at some point. All of these ways that we do through Best Buddies to help out those with intellectual and developmental disabilities, ways that we advocate for those individuals. But something that you maybe aren't as familiar with is our vision, where we eventually want to be at the end of the day, far down the line with what we do through Best Buddies and any other organization that we partner with. This comes from our founder and the CEO of Best Buddies, Anthony Kennedy Schreiber. And at the end of the day, we want to put Best Buddies out of business, but in the best way possible, of course. We want to envision a world where people with IDD are so integrated into our schools, workplaces, and communities that all the things that we do and the services that we provide will be unnecessary. But until that happens, we want to continue to educate all our schools, the community members, corporations, and employers about the emotional, functional, and natural needs and abilities of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. I more than likely won't see this in my lifetime, and you may not either, but the steps that we're taking today and in the years to come will hopefully build that path to having something like this, where everyone has awareness and understanding of course, not only the needs of those with IDD, but see that these individuals have something to bring to the table through various skill sets that they might have that they can bring in and be a contributing member of society as well, just like everybody else, and have those same opportunities. So these are some of the ways that Best Buddies advocates for those with IDD through the organization as a whole. Of course, we have our various programs, the chapters, Friendship and Promoter. That's y'all and all the things that you do during the academic school year, not only in your school, but outside of it for Best Buddies. We have our ambassador program, which is underneath our leadership pillar. And some of your buddies in your chapters may be part of that. And that is providing them the opportunity to be more vocal advocates and be representatives of the organization in projects that we may have, at meetings that we're a part of, community outreach that I go to, like fairs and such. We utilize our ambassadors to kind of be a face for Best Buddies and speak on their experiences within the organization as either a part of the friendship chapter or a jobs participant or in any other way, and to also speak on their experiences as somebody with a disability, and to spread that mission of Best Buddies in whatever way is possible. And then we of course have our jobs program that's where we have our staff, our job staff, assisting a jobs participant, somebody with IDD, through that entire process of landing a job, from finding it, securing it, and then being successful at it, and working with the employer as well to make sure that is a good fit on both sides. And of course, our volunteers, y'all utilize volunteers as of course we do as well. And it's important that we let our volunteers know what the Best Buddies mission is, so that they're not only assisting us in whatever we need their assistance with, but that they can go out and speak on what it is to be a part of Best Buddies and kind of drum up that interest and further advocacy for those with IDD. And social media, of course, is a big way to do this. Allie Lewis touched on this in the previous presentation. It's really important that y'all submit through BBO or directly to her those pictures and video and stories that you compile and have throughout the academic year on what you all are doing in your chapters, so that we can share that with the general public and kind of spread awareness of Best Buddies and everything that we're doing throughout the state of Texas, and also share that nationally and internationally when possible. And then we have state and national events, of course, the Friendship Walk and the galas. There's a gala in Dallas and in Houston, the Houston one being a state event and the one in Dallas being a national event. Both, of course, are fundraisers, but they also help bring awareness to a large group of people that may have not known about Best Buddies and that are like sponsors and potential donors or current donors to Best Buddies. We highlight our buddies and stories from not only our chapters, but the organization as a whole at these events, and especially with the Dallas one, it being a national event, making sure that everyone across every state knows what we're doing. With the Friendship Walk, that's more centered around our friendship chapters, and they happen in the spring. There's typically one in Dallas and one in Houston, and we try to have one in Central Texas as well. And this is basically a large celebration for y'all. We want to highlight all the great things that you do throughout the year, recognizing not only chapters, but also individuals within those chapters, and letting our buddies be recognized as well, and practice through the ambassadors, usually, those speeches that they've developed during our ambassador trainings, and be highlighted in that way as well. It is also a fundraiser, as it helps us provide funding for the programs that we have listed here, but it's also just a really big celebration, so all our chapters can get together and hang out for a while at a park, and through various activities that we provide, and music and food as well, and just have a great time one Saturday afternoon. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen once again and turn this over briefly to our area director, Kimberly Bush, so she can speak just briefly a little bit more information on the Friendship Walk. So Kimberly, you're welcome to go ahead and share your screen or open up your camera if you are on here. I don't see her here. So that's okay. I pretty much gave the gist of it. She was just going to speak a little bit more on what we're planning on doing this coming spring. We aren't, 100% sure what the status of the world is going to be regarding COVID in the spring. So like this year, we had it virtually, and it would all happen nationally on the same day in June. Our hope is that, we can do it in person, but of course, if we cannot, due to safety reasons, then of course it would probably be virtual. But just be well aware that the website is up now. So you guys can start thinking about the Friendship Walk and all that you usually do for that, starting now and checking out the website and signing up for it. But that was pretty much the gist of what she was going to go over. But going back onto what we're talking about here, advocacy. So Allie touched on this last Saturday briefly. I'm not going to go too much in depth on it. I just want to make sure that you guys are aware of these two pieces of legislation that more specifically are catered to what you guys do in your friendship chapters. ADA, or Americans with Disabilities Act, that is a very important piece of legislation that touches a wide a variety of different settings, but it prohibits discrimination of people with disabilities. And a key aspect of that is reasonable accommodations. Um, in your school, you may see that some of your buddies receive certain accommodations so that they can get that same level of education through various means of assistance, through maybe modified tests or assignments, so that they can, graduate and pass their exams and their grade. And then through the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA, this law mandates that children with disabilities must receive a free and appropriate education in the least restrictive environment. Your advisors are more familiar with this because they are required to create a plan for your buddies and anyone with a disability that would need additional support for them to pass their subjects and to graduate on time along with you. This includes people up to the age of 21 who receive special education and related services. Some of you are aware in high school chapters for sure. Some of your buddies are a little bit older. So this, of course, pertains to them. They're in school or given the option to stay in school until the age of 21, after which they're required to graduate as well. But just kind of keep this in the back of your head. You don't have to memorize it, of course. Just know that these pieces of legislation exist and that they're out there to assist your buddies in general. And if they come up in conversation, you kind of know a little bit about them as well. And then diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm not going to read through each of these definitions. They're pretty lengthy, but I do want to touch on each of them briefly and how they pertain to advocacy. We had our BBLC, our conference, this summer. Granted, it was all virtual, and there were various trainings. This was one of them, or various aspects of this presentation here were part of it. And all of these trainings were recorded, and they'll eventually be uploaded up to in BBU. There's just been a slight delay, so be on the lookout for that in hopefully the coming month. But I wanted to touch on each of these briefly and how they relate to the Best Buddies mission and advocacy. So when it comes to diversity, we want to make sure that your chapter is representative of the school that you're a part of, or the communities that you are a part of as well. It suppresses the differences in populations that have been and remain underrepresented. A key example of that is the IDD community. Also with that, equity, we want to make sure that you're promoting fairness through your chapters. The graphic up at the top right-hand corner, I think, is a great visual representation of what that's kind of like. Equality, everyone should be treated the same and given that same support or resource to reach a certain goal and quality of life. In the example here, there are two individuals trying to reach the bookshelf that's really high up, and they're both given a step stool. But some individuals, like the girl on the right, need additional support or have barriers that they must overcome first in order to reach that intended same goal, in this case, getting the book. So with equity, we want to make sure that you are being fair in providing these equal opportunities within your chapters and everything that you do as a chapter leadership. And you'll know that our buddies, for the most part, do require, some of them require some additional assistance with certain activities that you may put on, or events or things that you do throughout the chapter, as well as some of your peer buddies or associate members. They may need additional support in participating and being a part of your chapter. But so make sure that you are providing these supports necessary for everyone to take part in and equally in what you do. And then with inclusion, it's using having all these diverse voices and individuals to be given the same opportunity to voice their opinions and provide their feedback and participate fully in what you do related to Best Buddies. All these differences in opinion and different ideas, as they come together, will really help you all to become a very unique chapter and very successful. as you all come together and approach this following year and anything else that you do related to Best Buddies. But these are 3 things that we also just advocate for anyone to do as they go through anything related with Best Buddies and promoting that mission of assisting those with IDD. And then this graphic right here, I just wanted to include real quick because I think it sums up how these 3 intersect with one another really well. And at the end of the day, we want to make sure that everyone has a sense of belonging. That not only our buddies, but also peer buddies, associate members, our advisors, and anyone that takes part in anything Best Buddies related through our chapters or anything else feels like they belong or have a place with Best Buddies at the end of the day. And then some things that you should know and maybe already do know when it comes to your buddies and things to take into account for those one-to-one friendships, which of course, given everything that's going on this year, aren't required, but if you do set up these friendships and in general are still interacting with and including your buddies in all the various chapter activities and such that you do, just take into account that friendships take time. Everyone is different. Our buddies sometimes require a little bit more patience when you're, developing a friendship with them for the first time. It might take a little bit of time for them to open up to you. Some might be a little bit shy. Some might have some obstacles that they need to overcome first in order to be more comfortable with you, and vice versa. And then also recognize that your friendships aren't one-sided. You're both equal in that you're both peers going to school, and it's not up to just one person in the friendship to decide on everything that you guys are going to do when you guys hang out. It's a give and take. Both parties should be vocal or try to be vocal on like what it is that you want to do when you hang out. For example, some of our buddies may be a little bit shy in speaking up about what they would like to do. And of course, be patient, but like encourage them to give their opinions and give them a voice on what they would like to do when you guys hang out or when you guys are in chapter meetings or playing activities, either in a group setting or one-on-one. Treating your buddies, of course, through Best Buddies and these one-to-one friendships and friendships in general through the friendship program. We want to make sure that it's normalized to have a friendship between somebody with and somebody without IDD. Treating them just like you would anybody else in a friendship. Treating them as a peer and treating them with respect. Our buddies or your buddy is the same age as you. Some of them may look really young, and you may not intend to do this, but sometimes, and I've seen it, people will kind of speak down to them as if they're a young child, where in fact, of course, they're not. They're just somebody just like you. So please keep that in mind. I know sometimes it may be necessary for you to slow down your speech or emphasize certain words, but there's a difference between that and talking down to them as if they are a kid, a much younger kid. So please make sure you treat them as a peer and treat them with respect. The example here being somebody with a wheelchair, respecting that space and not handling the wheelchair or sitting on it if they don't allow you to, ask for that permission. And that kind of goes with the next slide here is setting boundaries. Physical and verbal, of course. For this year, basically, it'll be a little bit easier to set these physical boundaries because there will be a lot of social distancing, though every school district is different. Of course, follow the practices put in place there, those local guidelines. But, in a typical year, kind of determine what is appropriate. Some buddies may be really touchy-feely and constantly put their arm around you or go up and directly hug you. And if you're not comfortable with that, let them know. And if you do that to them, and they're not comfortable, make it okay for them to voice that and respect that boundary that they put in place and vice versa. just determine what's okay. Verbal boundaries, kind of determine what's okay to talk about, what's not. Um, some of your buddies may become really comfortable with you and start to say things that, they maybe shouldn't disclose. And when that happens, let them know that that's maybe not inappropriate and that, to not share that, just so that, you don't completely shut down the conversation right then and there and maybe hurt their feelings. Just let them know, um, you know, nicely. And if you have any issues with setting these boundaries or them following them as well, let either your advisor or your PM know to assist you in setting up these boundaries, or for them to help set up those boundaries with other people, or as they're a part of the one-to-one friendship. We're here to help in case you're unaware or unsure of how to do so. And then other boundaries to take into consideration, texting is a big one. Some of our buddies love to text at random times during the day and maybe not the most appropriate times. You're trying to go to sleep and then your phone starts buzzing, going off. You don't want to hurt their feelings by not answering, but you also want to let them know that there's a time and a place. So, setting up that boundary of, I'm going to sleep at this time, I'm not going to answer until the next day, things of that nature. Just knowing to set up that boundary ahead of time or when that happens. And then knowing how to help your buddy. Don't assume that they need your help. They're just like you. They should be trying to be independent and trying new things. But if you think they need your help, just ask them. Just constantly, or not constantly, but just try and ask them if you feel that they need assistance. Just keep that dialogue open and honest. And if there's something that you see is clearly distressing them, and you're not sure how to help, again, reach out to your advisor, the PM, and if needed, the parent is also a good resource as well. The advisors may know a little bit more about what's going on behind the scenes than you do, so it's a good idea to reach out to them. And again, if they're unable to, or the parent is unable to assist, then the PMs and myself can intervene as well. And this last slide here, I just wanted to include it. I used this piece of information here as a resource during a parent meeting, and it's just a list of organizations in 3 various categories that they can reach out to for various supports. I think that this would be maybe a good resource for the chapters to have in possibly finding organizations to do some community service with. And as well as provide to their buddies and the parents of buddies for services that maybe are around their area related to education, recreation, or housing. Housing being more pertinent to those ready to graduate high school or adults already. But a document like this in your chapter, I think, would be beneficial in providing to those that may need it. And building upon that with local organizations in your area so that you can provide resources and information for those with IDD, not only your chapter, but anybody that you work with in your community as well. But that about sums it up for the the advocacy part of this presentation. If there are any questions, you can let me know now. But there'll be time for questions again at the very end of the presentation. And if there isn't any, I'll go ahead and share my screen, or let To Be Like Me share their screen and speak on what disability education information they have. So I don't see any questions. All right, well then go ahead and take it away, Hollis, and I'll let you start and take over.
All right, thank you, Joaquin. Hi, everybody. My name is Hollis Owens. I am the executive director of an organization here in Dallas called To Be Like Me. We are a disability awareness program, and we feel so honored to have been asked to present to y'all today. I really wish we could be face to face, but we're going to do the best we can. You must be so proud to be a part of Best Buddies. I mean, it is such an amazing organization. The skills that y'all are going to develop just through being involved in Best Buddies will be with you for throughout your life. So what an amazing organization to be a part of. And we're just happy to be here today. You know, it just takes one person to make a difference. And, you know, we have a lot of leaders in our organization, and they help us deliver disability awareness education. And they often tell us that. They say, you know what, when I was involved in the Best Buddies program, just having that one person who cares made all the difference in the world. So just so excited to be here today. This is what we're going to talk about. I'm going to tell you a little bit about To Be Like Me, and then we're going to do a leader introduction. One of our awesome leaders is joining us today, and so you're going to meet her in just a moment. We're going to talk a little bit about some considerations when you interact and communicate with those who have IDD. And then we're going to talk about the importance of your language and the words that you use. And then we'll do a wrap-up question and answer session. So that's what we're going to do. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so I mentioned before, To Be Like Me is a disability awareness education program. These are just a few of our leaders, but we actually have about 18 leaders, and they have just a variety of differences. And so they actually tell their own stories. And it's through those stories that we really understand and appreciate our differences. So we aren't the ones delivering the message. Our leaders are the ones teaching our participants. We started out as an in-person program, and it was a 2-hour-long kind of a field trip destination where school-age kids would come and experience our program. Obviously, with COVID, we actually had to cancel many of our programs. And then now we've added an online curriculum, and Toya will tell you about that in just a minute. So when we talk about disability awareness, it's important to bring up empathy. And I don't know how much y'all have learned about empathy, but empathy is the ability to understand and appreciate the feelings of another. And when we're exposed to someone's story, it helps us absorb and appreciate and understand their life experience. And that's where empathy comes in. So as we look at people with disabilities and the challenges that they face, these types of conceptions, you know, does a person in a wheelchair, I mean, some people think that just because they're in a wheelchair, they can't walk, or maybe they can't communicate. And that's not true. You know, there's so much we can do in the area of education. In a recent study, a classroom of elementary school students, before they went through a disability awareness program, they were asked, how do you define disability? And their answer was, a person with a disability is someone with something wrong with them. That was their definition. And by the time they finished the disability awareness program, their new definition was an individual with feelings who lives their life in their own unique way. So we know that educating people about disabilities and differences makes a big difference. So we cover at least 8 different areas of disability, and so I'm showing those to you now. We're really gonna focus today on chromosome differences, and autism and sensory processing. So that's where we're going to focus. And this is just a picture of our team. As you can see, we have a great and diverse group, and we miss being together very much. So our Director of Education and Programming is going to take it away now. Toya, why don't you tell them about our online lessons?
You bet. All right. So as Hollis said, we love doing our in-person program. It's really cool. If you guys are ever in Dallas, or for those of you in the DFW area, contact us. We would love for you to go through it sometime. You'll definitely learn things. But since we can't do that, we decided to put some of our best thinking online for everyone to access during this time where everything's online, right? So you can go to our website. It's to belikeme.org, and there's a little orange circle that says online lessons. If you click it, you do have to create a login, but everything on there is free for you all. So this gives an example of what our menu looks like after you log in, and this is actually an older version of what it looks like, because we also have introductions, and we have conversation starters, along with our books, literature, writing, STEM activities, SEL, all this stuff, interactive quizzes, those are Kahoots, and leader interaction. So if you would like to specifically have one of our leaders teach you more about a disability, we can arrange a Zoom call with one of them so you can hear things in their own words. And you may be thinking, well, I don't want to do STEM lessons or writing. Yuck. There is great information on there. Lots of, did you know, and facts, and 1-minute videos. So if you have a buddy with autism and you know nothing about autism, this is a great resource for you. And then Hollis showed also under our Meet the Leader section, we have a Bitmoji classroom for every disability that you can interact with and click on, and it takes you to the different links for our lessons, because I'm sure you guys are sick of emoji classrooms. Teachers have to put a Bitmoji on everything these days. So here is our autism classroom. And did you want to play any of those links, Hollis, or move on?
I think we want to make sure and have lots of time for Anne Marie, so.
Okay, so here is our autism classroom again, but I would just encourage you to use our website for a resource. I know Joaquin and your Best Buddies team provide fantastic resources. Our website's there. You can email Hollis and I if you have any questions anytime. But really your best resource is going to be your best buddy, and creating that relationship with them and being able to ask them questions. Because we say, if you met one person with autism, you met one person. So you need to ask them specifically, how their disability affects them. And now I'm going to move on. I have the pleasure of introducing one of our leaders, Miss Anne Marie Kerrigan, who is a Best Buddies ambassador, who is the star of the movie Normie, who is the #1 Gilmore Girls fan and a coffee addict. So take it away, Anne Marie.
Okay, hi. I'm Anne Marie. I was born and raised in Dallas, Texas. And when I was growing up, I actually, my mom and I started a chapter of Best Buddies in high school. And we were the very first one that had the idea to put Best Buddies in our high school. And then over the years, we tried to figure out a way to put it in our middle school's program, in a middle school program. And I think that's how we transport Best Buddies into our high schools. Again, Victoria said, I love coffee. I love to read books, and I'm a huge Gilmore Girls fanatic. And that is basically who I am. But with Best Buddies, I again told you I started a program in my high school and middle school, and uh, I have no words how to explain Best Buddies. It has changed my life for every sense of way possible. I had a buddy that is a great friend of mine and still a great friend of mine named Addie, and she helped me with my communication and learning ability and be in a collaborated in high school and learn the way I can speak up to people, be who I am. And I love Best Buddies in many ways. I actually work with Best Buddies because with I work with UP Miller, the high donor person, Sian Miller. Um, I work with her, and she's also with Best Buddies that does a lot for them over the years. I also work with Best Buddies and UP Miller as a literary agency. And yes, that's my work life. Um, with I'm also in. I am a star in a documentary film called Normie, and it is about the illusion of normal and the beauty of love through the lens of Down syndrome. This movie is an hour-and-a-half film that explores what is normal. I do, if you see the screen, I am looking at Palma, and this is a baby with Down syndrome. She is everything. She is trying to figure out, the mom, Katie, is trying to figure out Palma, how does she grow up and be accepted by her, by in life. So Nomi is everything. We went all over the U.S. to film Nomi. If you would like to see Nomi, it's not really out yet because of different fires coming out and COVID-19 and stuff. Just if you want to see a trailer, go onto our website, and it's nomifilm.com. If you like to
And
see
actually, Anne-Marie, you know what? We have the trailer all ready to show them. Isn't that awesome?
Okay.
So let's go ahead and show
It is.
them.
Okay.
Normal set of DNA. Everyone's abnormal, and we're all going to have to face the music at some point. It's because of my insecurities and because of my limitations.
Don't you dare! Don't put on me! Don't put on me! Do you think that God put me on this earth for a reason? Give Palmer time to process things. You can hold Palmer whenever you want. It doesn't matter what people say about you. You are amazing.
What we believe changes the reflection that you see.
Oh my.
For that reality faces all of us. The fact that I think we are scared of that is part of what keeps us from loving one another well.
You should watch this next video. I was on Dr. Fair talking about Nomi.
Coming up for Senate Democrats, and they need your help right now if they're going to meet it.
Sorry, Anne-Marie. Go ahead.
I was on Dr. Fair. The video was about to pop on about me being on Dr. Fair and that's talking about Nomi.
Okay, so thank you so much, Anne-Marie. And you know what? There's going to be time at the end to ask questions to Anne-Marie. So if you have some for her, please just write them down. And then at the end, we will address those questions. Toya is going to talk to everybody a little bit about interacting and supporting students with IDD, Down syndrome, and autism. So Toya, take it away.
All right. Well, I have my eye on the chat. So if anything comes up you want to know, just put it in there and I'll try to address it as we go. And also, Anne-Marie and Hollis, feel free to just tag right in if there's something you want to add. I love the enthusiasm I saw when you all were describing Best Buddies. And I think this program has so much value. So thank you for participating in it. And my number one recommendation, really in so many areas of life, but especially with Best Buddies, is find your similarities. Find your similarities with your buddy and everybody else. Hollis and I are kind of nerdy. We love research. And there's a lot of research that says you are more empathetic to someone you have similarities with. So you got to find those similarities, okay? And maybe that's something that's built into all of your meetings. I know on our website, we have conversation starter questions. We actually have a lot of things that could be used for this. And I also believe that representation matters. So I think it would be really cool to have a conversation question led by somebody living with a chromosomal difference or autism, leading those questions for you. So use that as a resource, but that is so important. And Joaquin talked about this. This is, I know a lot of our leaders I talk to with differences, this is kind of one of their pet peeves, is have age appropriate interactions. So, you know, we all have our actual age and then our developmental age. I can tell you Anne-Marie is 23. Her interests are very much that of a 23-year-old. She acts her age. My daughter has a friend with Down syndrome who is 12, and her favorite show is Elena of Avalar. I don't know if you know that show. It's probably past your time, but it's a show that's for younger kids. But you know what? It's her thing, and that is fine. And it is fine for you to talk about it with her because you talk about your same age peers. You talk about TV with them. You can talk about TV with her. What would not be okay is if you were walking down the hall at school and you held her hand and guided her to class, right? You don't do that with peers your age. So you shouldn't do it with somebody just because they have a disability. So just check yourself occasionally and say, am I treating them age appropriately, my buddy age appropriately? That's just a good thing to think about. All right, filters. Joaquin talked about this too. And you know what? A lot of our buddies with autism, this is just kind of part of their disability. You and I have been taught from a very early age by parents and teachers what's appropriate and not appropriate. A lot of times people with autism, sometimes IDD, just say the first thing that comes to their mind, right? I'll give you an example of this. We were doing a To Be Like Me class, and one of our leaders with autism, who is I think 21, sat down with a group of fourth graders, and this was in March when the whole pandemic thing was coming out, and he sat down and said, well, we're going to have a pandemic and we're all going to die. And the fourth graders' eyes just were like, ugh. So I walked over and I said, hey, you know what? That's not something we're going to talk about at To Be Like Me. That's something they can talk about with their parents. And I said to the students, I said, you know, this is part of autism. Sometimes they don't have a good filter and they don't know what's socially appropriate. So we use that as a learning opportunity. And then they just went on and talked about video games. So if it happens, sometimes we let it go. Sometimes we just gently, you know, make the correction. You could hurt somebody's feelings or that's not appropriate. And then if it's something that really makes you uncomfortable, like Joaquin said, you have an advisor that you can touch base with on how to handle it and let them know. A really good thing is it's good to have a routine. If your buddies know, you know, the meeting's going to start out with a game and then we're going to do these breakout groups and then we're going to end by planning for next time or whatever. If you have a routine, it's easier to comprehend what's going on and be doing socially do the right thing every time. So think about that. What is my routine for our meetings? All right. Hollis, I'm not seeing the next one.
next on here is pictures and words and first.
Okay. So our next thing is, and this is something that's really good for all of us. If you can use pictures with the words you're saying, it just makes it easier to understand. So let's say you were going to do a relay race at one of your meetings, and you wanted students to eat 5 marshmallows, run to a bucket, fill it up with tennis balls, and then skip back. You might borrow some images from Google and put them on a poster board that has, you know, marshmallows, run, bucket with a tennis ball, and then skipping, all right? So they just know, they can look at that and easily process what comes next. And your teachers do this all the time. Maybe your meeting next time is gonna be on the basketball court instead of in the cafeteria. Put a picture of that, because the picture is gonna stick in your brain better than words. So anytime you can pair those two together, it's very useful. Also, if you can demonstrate things first, like I talked about the relay race, have somebody run it as an example first. That helps it make sense more. So anything we can pair with words, whether it's an action or a picture, is very helpful.
Repetition?
Okay, yes. All right, we're gonna go 2 ways with this. So repetition, you might need to repeat directions or questions for your buddy, and that's okay. That's just normal. You might need to reword it or try to say it a different way. But also, I know some people I know with Down syndrome are hard to understand, and you may have to ask them to repeat things. And I encourage you to do that. It is more insulting not to understand somebody and just shake your head and let them go on than to actually try to understand them. So it's okay to say, can you repeat that? Or Hollis does this great thing where she says, will you break that into little parts for me and tell it to me again? Because it's important you make an effort to respect them and try to understand them. Another thing, checking for understanding. Just from time to time, walking to this, stop and say, does anybody have any questions? Does everybody understand? You know, you can use the thumbs up tool or have people give a thumbs up. And also, if it's appropriate, you can say, could you repeat it back to me, to just make sure they have that understanding if it's something really important. And always, I think you guys are really good at this, but be sure everyone's included. Like Joaquin said, some people are shy and they may need that extra little bit of encouragement. So do that visual scan around the room or around the Zoom, and just make sure everybody's participating.
And of course, the most important thing.
The most important thing is have fun. This should be fun, and it's okay. And we're all going to do things wrong or things we would have changed, but have fun with it, because I really believe it's mutually beneficial. You're both going to get so much out of your interaction. All right, and we're going to go into kind of some specifics here. If you have a buddy who is deaf or hard of hearing, this is something that we may be a little less familiar with. Since you're going to be meeting on Zoom this year, and that is a really challenging, or whatever your system is to meet, that's a challenging scenario for somebody with a hearing loss. So you might let them get on 5 minutes early and make sure the sound is okay, make sure everything's okay for them. You know, check the lighting. If somebody's sitting with a bright light behind them, that makes you kind of look like a silhouette. So they can't see your lips moving and they can't see your gestures. That's not good for somebody with a hearing, who's hard of hearing. You want to keep your face clear, and use screen share if you can. So if it's maybe instructions for something, and you can type them out so they can read them rather than just relying on lip reading and hearing, that's very beneficial. And reduce background noise. Be sure everybody's on mute. We all know that by now, right? Be on mute. Like when I started this call, I was sitting outside and I was like, there's way too much wind and stuff, so I'm gonna go inside. That's not very nice of me for people who are listening. And this will go back with the first one. They may need to do a sound check to make sure the quality of sound is good. All right, and now let's talk about buddies who might be blind or have a visual impairment. I know I had been working in schools for a long time before I ever had a student that was blind, and it was really a big learning experience for me. And I can tell you, our friends that are blind are the most adaptive people ever. They're pretty amazing. And actually only 15% of blind people can't see anything. Most people who are categorized as blind do have some sight, so they're able to use assistive technology like screen readers to help them. So I know one of our leaders who is blind is very active on social media because he has a screen reader that reads it all to them. And then some that do have sight utilize big screens or programs that can increase the size of fonts to very big so they can read it and participate. But what will help them is if you reduce visual clutter. So like Bitmoji classrooms, that is not good for them. That's way too cluttered. They just need kind of a plain slide with words on it. That's it. And then also be mindful of the contrast in your fonts. If you look at the back of our slide where it's blue with the black writing on it, that's not good for a blind person, right? This white with the blue font is much clearer and easier to see. So just be mindful of that. And then also verbally summarize any visuals. And Hollis is really good at that. When we have Zoom calls with our leader who's blind, if somebody does something that's funny or somebody shows a picture, she'll just say, hey, let me describe that for you. And we just all stop and she describes it and he says thank you and then we move on. So just that's perfectly okay. And just some things to remember, interact and engage, interact on an appropriate age level, find common ground. That's the number one thing. That's going to make your relationships the most meaningful and authentic. And use pictures when possible, keep that routine, say their names. People love to have their name said. If you don't know that, that makes them feel really good. They feel seen, they feel heard when you say their name. And check for understanding. Like Joaquin said, set boundaries. We do have one leader who initially started calling me about 3 times a day. He's already called me since we've been on this Zoom. But, you know, I said 1 time a day is enough. And, you know what, he was cool with it. And I felt really awkward saying that, but it was fine and it needed to be said. So don't be afraid to ask for boundaries. And have fun. Have fun. This is so much fun. I love going to work every day and working with our leaders. We have a great time. So I'm going to pass it back to Hollis to talk to you about what words to use, because sometimes that can be really tricky.
Okay, thank you, Toya. So before we started really getting going with our programming, we had 10 different focus groups. And each focus group involved a different group of individuals with a disability. And we asked lots of questions. We asked, how do you like to be addressed? And honestly, it varies. But what we did is we came up with this chart to help you kind of, as you navigate talking with or about people with disabilities. This is a good guide. First of all, it's always best to use person-first language. And I know you've heard this before, but please don't say that Down syndrome kid. This person is first and foremost a person or an individual. So that's how you should address in a sentence, if you're talking about someone with Down syndrome, they are a person or an individual with Down syndrome. We don't say wheelchair bound or confined to a wheelchair. Instead, it's best to say this is a person who uses a wheelchair, or they are a wheelchair user. We don't say handicap. We actually prefer the term accessible. So if you're talking about a parking space, you wouldn't say that's a handicap parking space. It's accessible. And then as the next one shows, handicapped and crippled, it's disability. Use the word disability. And I'll be honest with you, when we first started, we didn't want to use the word disability. We were thinking that maybe it would be better to say someone who is differently abled. So go ahead and say it. Retarded, the R word, that is not appropriate at all. Should never be used ever. Bold on his heart. Someone may have an intellectual disability or an intellectual and developmental delay. Please don't say if someone may be high or low functioning. It's best to say how much support they need. If you're explaining it to someone, they need more support or less support. And then in the hearing community, you don't use the word impairment. You don't say hearing impaired. Instead, you would say deaf and hard of hearing. You don't say nonverbal or mute. Instead, you might say that they communicate non-verbally, okay? Communicate non-verbally, that's the best way to say it. We also don't use the word suffer. So you wouldn't say suffering from mental illness or afflicted with mental illness. You can say they are living with mental health challenges or they're living with mental illness. So that's just an overview of language. And also, if you don't know how to address someone, or if you're worried that you're going to say the wrong thing, just ask. How would I refer to your disability? Just ask, because that's the best thing to do. I'll never forget, I was at a meeting in Houston at a Ability Expo, and I used the term differently abled with someone who was sitting in a wheelchair. And she said, no, honey, you don't say differently abled. I have a disability. And I just looked at her and I said, can I pull up a chair and talk to you about this? Because I have questions. And she said, of course. And we had a great discussion, and I learned a lot. So don't be afraid to ask. Okay, that is all we have for disability awareness. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen, Joaquin. Opening it up for more questions as a whole.
All right. Thank you for all that information from all three of y'all. Also, if you could transfer over the controls back to me. I know I gave you the host capabilities, but yeah, and also so I can share my screen for the last slide. And if anybody has any questions, if they're already in the chat, we'll try to address them. And if you have any more questions in general, then you can let us know. Hollis, are you still sharing your screen?
I'm not.
Oh, okay.
I made you host.
Okay. Okay, there was just a bit of delay. I got it now. Got it.
Okay.
No worries. Okay. All right, cool. All right, so that pretty much concludes the presentation. If anyone has any questions, please, share your screen or type it in the chat, and we'll address them as best as possible regarding what I talked about or what To Be Like Me and the speakers from their organization spoke. And before we get to the questions real quick, I just want to make a few brief announcements. The main one being that there are some things that you should know about. So here we go. So LLTD, we're still having a presentation next Saturday on September 26th. So be on the lookout for that link and that information. And of course, we'll be sharing all this information and the recording that we made from this presentation with y'all next week, just like we did with the first presentation. The other thing is that we have eBuddies, which some of y'all are familiar with. And we just want y'all to know that there is a need for individuals with IDD to be a part of that. That basically is a virtual one-to-one friendship, similar to your friendship program in terms of the friendship chapters. We just have a large influx of applications from individuals without IDD that want to be matched up in a one-to-one friendship. So if you want and are able to, please share this information with your buddies in your chapters, that they have the opportunity to also be matched up in a virtual friendship with someone else alongside of the friendships that they already have within your chapter. And that information can be found on our website, and it'll also be provided in the information that we forward over to everyone next week. And then when it comes to ambassadors, I've touched on this already. Ambassadors can be anybody with or without IDD. We have the majority of them being individuals that are college aged or adults. We have some that are high school aged. We would like some more that are from our high school chapters if possible. So if you feel like your buddy would be a great fit for that and could benefit from additional leadership trainings to develop various skills. And also besides all these trainings, we provide social events for our ambassadors to hang out virtually during this time because they may be a little bit more socially isolated than our other participants. And for that information, you can reach out to either myself or Allie for that. But yeah, at this point, are there any questions from anybody on what was discussed? I'll try and check the chat and see if there's anything there, but otherwise, you're more than welcome to share your screen and unmute yourself if you have a question that you would like to ask as well. Okay, I saw some questions on here, but it seems like they've been answered by either To Be Like Me or earlier with the SAB. But other than that, does anybody have any questions for Anne Marie while she's on here as well? Some of you might be already familiar with her since she's been a part of Best Buddies for a while now. But no, real quick, I have a question for you, Anne Marie. If you want to unmute yourself. I was wondering how you're coping with the quarantine so far, with everything that's going on. How's that affecting you?
First of all, with work, I've been going into the office once in a while for work reasons, but with the quarantine is because we're technically closed in the office, so I do work from home, and that's really boring for me. It's really boring. Like, I got nothing to do because of work,
Okay.
kind of thing.
Cool.
And then socially stuff, I can't go out with friends very often because of the COVID and the social distancing.
No, of course. How did Best Buddies, or how was your school experience with or without Best Buddies when you were going through school? How was that?
So without Best Buddies, I was being bullied throughout. Without Best Buddies being bullying, and there was a story where a teacher called me in choir a dying seer because I sounded like a dying seer in choir. And then with Best Buddies, they kind of blocked bullying for me in a way that with words to understand and to have friends around me and knowing that I'm accepted.
Okay. Well, I don't see any other questions. Also, Ashlyn just pointed out in the chat If you haven't already, please type in the name of your chapter so we can take attendance. But I mean, that pretty much wraps up the presentation for today for LLTD. If you have any questions, I'm still going to stay on as well as the other PMs for any other questions that you may have and maybe don't want to vocalize with everyone around here, but y'all are welcome to now jump off and enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Thank you very much for being here and being a part of this. And thank you, Hollis and Anne-Marie and Toya for all the information you guys gave. That was very, very helpful and insightful. Very, very glad that you guys were a part of this.
Well, we enjoyed it very much. And, you know, if you gave us